Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us all for our Distinguished Speaker Series. We are so excited to have Supervisor Terra Lawson-Remer here joining us today. She is the District 3 County Supervisor, and we're very happy to have her here. Before we get started, a little bit about the Community Center. My name is Nancy Walters. I'm the Executive Director here, and we invite you to join us for programs that we have to offer. We are a nonprofit organization that serves adults and seniors every day, so we have all sorts of great programs and activities here, ranging from special events like concerts, speaker series, day trips, that sort of thing, as well as daily programs, which include yoga, Zumba, art classes, language, all sorts of really neat programs. And you can learn a lot more about what we have to offer on our website. That's ljcommunitycenter.org. Or of course, you could give us a call. That's 858-459-0831. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about Supervisor Lawson-Remer. As a third-generation San Diegan, Terra Lawson-Remer is proud to represent District 3 on the San Diego County Board of Supervisors. Supervisor Lawson-Remer is an economist, attorney, and public policy expert who has dedicated her life to working for social, environmental, and economic justice. Terra has served as a senior advisor in the Obama administration, written award-winning research books, taught graduate students as a professor of public policy, and worked with the United Nations, World Bank, Amnesty International, and governments worldwide to advance sustainable development and economic inclusion. Growing up in San Diego, Terra's first job in public service was nearly 25 years ago as a San Diego City Council staffer. After graduating from Yale and earning her law degree and PhD on a full scholarship to NYU, she worked around the world as an economist to create jobs, restart businesses, and generate economic activity after a crisis. Terra was elected by a wave of grassroots support in November of 2020 and was sworn into office on January 4th, 2021, becoming the only LGBTQ member of the board. As Supervisor Terra Lawson-Remer is taking bold action and forging strong and effective working relationships with her fellow supervisory board members and community partners. Terra understands that the issues of transportation and traffic, affordable housing, and environmental sustainability in our county are inextricably interconnected and must be addressed with a bold plan. That is why she was proud to author and pass a proposal for a regional sustainability plan with a goal of achieving zero carbon by 2035. This made San Diego County the largest region in the country to commit to this ambitious target. She is also advancing innovative solutions to address our affordable housing crisis. Since joining the board, Terra has been appointed to represent the county on SANDAG, the Regional Transportation Authority, where she will fight for investments in the green economy to tackle the climate crisis and prioritize environmental justice and equity. Terra lives in Encinitas with her daughter. She's also a certified emergency medical responder, and in her free time, she takes kids on backpacking trips to teach teamwork, personal resilience, and respect for nature. Please help me welcome Supervisor Terra Lawson-Remer.
Hi, thank you so much. Really a pleasure to be here. So I'm going to just say a few words about myself and the work that we've been doing, but mostly I really want to be able to answer your questions and hear what's on your mind. So I think first of all, just for everyone, there's redistricting, and this year, for the first time ever, there was an independent redistricting commission that drew the lines and created really a new coastal district for the county of San Diego. So you're now in a district that stretches from Carlsbad to Coronado, which I think is really wonderful. As I meet with folks across the district, I'm really struck by how similar a lot of the challenges that we face are in all of our different communities. So I think it's really important that we can be a united voice on coastal and beach issues and environmental issues on the board, because that's certainly an issue that I think is really important to all of my constituents and is one of my top priorities as well. So welcome to District 3. A little bit about me. I think you got the background, but I grew up in San Diego. I'm a third generation San Diegan. I actually went to now get to fight for and represent La Jolla. It's really wonderful to have La Jolla in my district. And I still have my Vikings letter jacket, which my staff loves to tease me about wearing. They think I need a new coat, but I said now I get to wear it because I have La Jolla back. So it's great. We have an opportunity on the Board of Supervisors to do something really different in San Diego County. We had a Board of Supervisors that for really over a generation was focused on doing as little as possible. And often would leave state and federal funds on the table because they just really wanted the county to have as small of a footprint as conceivably possible. So there were so many opportunities that now with my new colleagues on the board, we're all very focused on tackling some of the biggest challenges that face our region and doing it in a way that can be effective and innovative and really make a difference for our community. Some of my biggest priorities that I'm working with on the Board of Supervisors with my colleagues, but also working with Mayor Todd Gloria and the mayors of some of the other cities in my district include homelessness. This, I think, is an issue that we all know matters and it has mattered for a long time, but it just became so much more foregrounded under COVID. And we could see that there was a huge population of individuals that needed services, that need services, that are on our streets, but had been swept out of sight. They'd been being locked in jail. And then when COVID happened, and a lot of these folks who really had been arrested for something like sleeping in a doorway or a really small misdemeanor were released, we realized that we've been using our jail system as our homeless shelters of first resort, which is horrible on many levels. First of all, because it doesn't do anything to address the problem in a long-term way. Nobody gets better if they're experiencing mental and behavioral health crises. Nobody gets a job. Nobody gets back on their feet. And if anything, they get further and further behind when they get involved in the justice system. So when we put people in jail, we make it harder for them to get the services and the support that they need to get back on their feet. We undermine our ability to move towards the long-term effective solutions. And it costs us as taxpayers a huge amount of money. It's about $80,000 a year to put a person in jail. When it's closer to $30,000 a year to actually get them the kind of services that would hopefully allow them to move off the streets and either get a job or get the kind of mental and behavioral health support that they need. So that, I think, has been from day number one of my biggest priorities. And it's something that we're working on in a comprehensive way, region-wide, in terms of we've created a new office of regional homeless solutions at the county. We've never had any kind of entity at the county to focus on homelessness. So this is a big step forward. But we're also hiring outreach workers throughout the county and doing a real data-driven deep dive on the collection of services that are needed for folks so that they don't get arrested and put in jail when that's not what they need, when they really need mental health services. So this is something that I'm really focused on. I think is really important, not just for compassionate reasons, which of course I think is always front of mind, is how do we do right by folks in our neighborhoods, but also for really practical reasons of what's effective, what's the best use of scarce taxpayer money, and how do we really make a difference that can be long lasting. I'm also very focused on climate. I mean, we as a community on the beaches and coastlines are on the front line of climate change. We're the ones who are dealing with rising sea levels. We're the ones dealing with bluff collapses, with homes that could be submerged underwater. But also just in California in general, and San Diego in particular, we're dealing with wildfires, we're dealing with droughts. And these are all the effects of climate change, and we can do so much more. So that's why I brought forward about a year ago an action to start a regional solution to climate. This is called our Regional Decarbonization Plan. It's the first of its kind in the country. For the most part, all these climate action plans we all hear about, they're really piecemeal. It's, the city's doing its part, the county's doing its part, but what about how we get all these jurisdictions to work together? Because we know we live in a regional economy. And we know that so much of our carbon emissions comes from cars idling in traffic and from electricity. And these are challenges that require a regional solution. So we're really focused on how do we work interjurisdictionally to have a regional solution on climate. So in that regard, we are really pushing forward something pretty innovative, our regional decarbonization and green jobs plan. Also looking at how we can invest in good green jobs in the new green economy. It's not just about climate, which is obviously incredibly important, but how do we do this in a way that grows our San Diego economy and creates good jobs for working families in San Diego County? So that's a big priority, a big focus. And we're going to be looking at a set of policy proposals in August in terms of what the county can do directly, and also in my capacity as our member representative on San Diego Community Power. I'm really focused on moving us towards 100% renewable energy through San Diego Community Power, and particularly on programs to support rooftop solar. We could get about 35% of our electric needs, our electricity needs here in San Diego County from rooftop solar, but we're at just a few percent right now. And it's a massive missed opportunity. So that's a major priority for me and something I'm working on both at the county, but also with San Diego Community Power, where I'm a board member. And then the other thing to just mention on climate is the work that we're doing to invest in transit through SANDAG. And one of my big priorities there is the train, the coaster that goes from Los Angeles to San Diego. And it is so slow and it is so inefficient. And I lived in the East Coast for a long time. I took the Excella from New York to Washington many weeks. And there's no reason why our train has to be second or third class compared to the Northeast Corridor. We are the second most traveled train route in the entire country. But frankly, our rail system is just not up to standard whatsoever. We've got a section of the bluffs in Del Mar that our train goes over. I'm always worried the train's going to fall into the sea if climate change keeps happening and the bluffs collapse. So this is a major priority, is rebuilding this rail from Los Angeles to San Diego, the coaster corridor, and also investing in making it faster. I live in Encinitas with my little daughter, and I would love to take the train to work. I work downtown, but unfortunately it takes over an hour to get from Encinitas to downtown. But the experts at SANDAG tell me that if we made the investments that are planned now and are anticipated, it would be 17 minutes, which would be a total game changer. We'd be able to get from here to LA in an hour. So that's definitely a priority in terms of transit. Couple other things top of my radar is absolutely protecting our beaches and coastlines. There's no question that what makes San Diego such a special place is our beaches, and that's why people come here. They come for the beach and they stay for the zoo. But they came for the natural habitat, the ocean, the dolphins, sometimes even the surfers that make up the natural ecosystem of San Diego County. And all of that's made possible by beautiful, pristine oceans. And unfortunately, too often when it rains, there's toxic runoff that runs into our oceans, and you can't go in the ocean. It's dirty and it's not safe. And so as a surfer, but also as a mom, I'm very focused on protecting our beaches and coastlines and cleaning them up so we can maintain our wild habitat and make it safe for families and also the dolphins and seals and sea lions that accompany us in the oceans. So in that capacity, I've been working really hard on our stormwater. One of the reasons we have such a bad runoff problem is because we don't have good stormwater infrastructure. And so we really need to do a lot better. And I've been working on trying to raise the revenue to improve our stormwater system so that when it rains, we don't end up with toxic pollutants running off into our oceans. Also really working hard on the Tijuana River Valley and cleaning that up. We've made a ton of progress. We now have a kind of a tentative agreement around $300 million to help clean up the Tijuana River Valley. That won't happen all at once. It'll come in tranches. We'll have to do a little bit and show that we're on track, and then we can go back and get additional funds from the federal government. But that feels like we're finally going in the right direction on that issue, which obviously affects my whole district because the sewage runoff from Tijuana goes all the way up to Orange County. So certainly impacts all of us in La Jolla. So those are some of my big priorities. Also, just want to take a moment to talk about mental and behavioral health. As a mom, I think that it's very clear that we have a lot of gaps in our system around mental and behavioral health. A lot of young people who were not able to go to school, but also a lot of our seniors who were isolated over the last 2 years are really, really suffering. And then we also have so many folks that are on our streets and homeless, really because they haven't been able to get the mental and behavioral health services they need. So investing in those services is a big priority for me, but also for all of my board members. We're really working on, first of all, building more beds because there's no point in having services if we don't have anywhere to put folks, which is definitely a big part of the problem. But also we have a huge workforce shortage and a workforce capacity problem. And I am the chair of the San Diego Workforce Partnership. So we're doing a lot of work to assess what some of the shortfalls are in terms of our workforce development and our workforce pipeline. For people in the mental and behavioral health field, and how we can do a lot better, through scholarships, through grants, through expanded opportunities for folks who do get those degrees, because these are positions we desperately need to fill. So both on the bedside, but also on the workforce side, really looking at those investments as a top priority as well. I could continue on. There's so much that we're doing at the county. It really feels like a huge opportunity to make a major contribution to the community I grew up. I definitely want to mostly spend time having opportunity for questions. But before we go to that, I do just want to mention one thing that's really, I think, an overarching philosophy that I try to bring to all aspects of the work, which is really to be evidence-based and to gather data and see what's working and what's not working. It's a $7 billion budget, and it's really important that we're spending our resources in a way that are making an impact, a really positive impact for our community. And coming to this work from having spent a long career as an academic, a researcher, a policy advisor, I do really understand the possibilities, the opportunities that are opened up when you do good research and evaluation and monitor and evaluate the impacts of programs, so that we can learn from setbacks, be open to acknowledging when a program doesn't make the impact that we hoped it would make, and move on if it's not doing a good job, but also scale up successes. And when programs are working, then those are the ones we need to quadruple our investment in and really look to scale up and roll out further. So bringing that approach where we're looking at data and we're looking at impact and trying to be really rigorous in our own evaluation of the impacts we're making, or sometimes not making in the community, and being willing to pivot when something's not working, and double and triple down when something is, I think is just a completely different way that government does not normally operate, and certainly vastly different than the way the old Board of Supervisors operated, which is really focused on just kind of trying to do as little as possible. So that feels like just an important thread that impacts and informs all of my work and all of our work across the county. So like I said, I think we're doing a lot of other things on gun violence in schools, on childcare. There's just a lot more pieces of the work, but I don't want to just talk. I want to also listen. So why don't I stop there and open the floor for questions?
Absolutely. Thank you, Supervisor Lawson-Remer. The first question is, San Diego just surpassed San Francisco as the most expensive city to live. Why does income not correlate more with cost of living?
Such a good question. So one of the biggest drivers of our cost of living is housing. And we have a huge problem with housing. So that's why I started our regional housing committee on SANDAG. And in that capacity, I'm working on putting together a regional housing authority that would be able to invest in affordable and middle class housing. We don't have anything like that. So basically, we have no plan, frankly, for housing. We basically said, okay, the private sector is going to be able to take care of this, but the cost of land is very high, you know, like especially in the coast and anywhere that would be transit supported and dense, which is the kind of places we obviously need to be building if we care about our climate footprint. And also the kind of places we need to be building so people don't spend like their entire life stuck in traffic. But the places we need to build that would be climate friendly, environmentally friendly, like the right places to raise a family, that would contribute to the quality of life of our community, or the land is really expensive. And we haven't done a good job historically of essentially like capturing the value of public investments, right? Like public invests in roads, in infrastructure, in facilities, in, you know, trolleys. But we then just make it an expenditure. And even though that really raises the property values around those amenities, that we as a public haven't been able to benefit from those increased property values and those increased investments. So I think there's the answer to your question of like, why is it so expensive, and why is cost of living not keeping up with well, the other way around, why are wages not keeping up with cost of living, is pretty complex, right? Like there's a lot about the structure of the economy and, you know, how jobs and wages are set economy wide. And I think that's a complex question that I would love to have time to answer. It's something I think a lot about, but I always try to stay focused on the practical, like what can we do here in San Diego that's like within our locus of control. And I think the thing that we got to focus on that's in our locus of control is dealing with our housing costs. And so we really need to be leaning into a more foregrounding a more prominent role for government in trying to figure out how to make the market work around housing. And that is not a role that we've ever had any agency playing. You know, our housing authorities here have been focused on homelessness, which is very important to be tackling. But I think there's a lot more work we need to do on first-time home buyers, middle class, middle income San Diegans, like, you know, people who have, you know, are at average San Diego income, but you can't possibly buy a house, which the average cost of a house in San Diego County is now $800,000 for, you know, a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house, often pretty far from schools or other amenities. And a lot of folks, you know, making a $80,000, $90,000 a year can't possibly ever get their foot in that market. And so what that does is it not just prices them out, which is, you know, a real big problem, but then it creates ripple effects across all of our income classes. So if you're a middle income San Diegan and you can't get into, you know, a starter home, then you're renting, and then renters who are, you know, maybe making less money, now they're bumped down into even a lower class rent situation, and then it trickles down so that the people at the bottom of the rung are basically kicked out in the streets and are homeless because they can't afford it. So anyway, it's a long answer to say I think housing's got to be a big piece of the big piece of what we're working on.
Thank you. Another question, what are the unemployment rates looking like in San Diego? I seem to see a lot of help wanted signs at restaurants and a lot of understaffed restaurants. What's being done?
There is a big labor shortage in San Diego. Same kind of, it's a national problem. We definitely are seeing it here. And I don't think there's nothing really we can do as a county on this front, right? Like the issue is, you know, I think we can do things in a targeted way in terms of trying to train workforce for some key sectors. And I'm really focused on healthcare, mental and behavioral health, emergency services, the childcare providers, preschool teachers. There's a lot of like essential services that we have to do better, and we're understaffed. And so that's where I think we can make a difference. And that's where my focus is training workforce for some of these really essential services. But in terms of people at the restaurants, honestly, there's not much we can do from a government seat.
Thank you. Next question is, what is the county doing to welcome and provide services for immigrants and refugees? Is there a department that oversees this? And is the program to provide legal assistance to those who are scheduled for deportation up and running?
Was this a plant? This is such a good question. I'm serious. What a wonderful question. So yes and yes. So we just founded the first ever Office of Immigrant and Refugee Affairs, and we're in the process of hiring a director for that new office, which is fantastic. Really excited about that, and that's going to be really coordinating like a lot of the services for folks that are coming into the country. And then, of course, I'm the attorney on the board, so my pet project is everything to do with legal services. So my real focus and my real baby has been the Immigrant Legal Defense Program. And I've been working really hard on that, and it is scheduled to start next week in terms of being able to provide services, which is just in time. We're expecting a number of folks to start entering, many people from Ukraine and other countries, and so yeah, it's really exciting. And the program is going to provide attorneys for folks who are detained, so people who are actually in detention and been charged with being deported, and will help them ensure that they have adequate legal representation and a fair justice process.
Thank you. Next question is, just filed my California state tax return. Taxes in California are almost confiscatory in nature. How long will it be before our state becomes too costly to live in?
I feel like that's above my pay grade. We don't get to, we spend some of your money, but we don't create the tax system. So I think that's a question for our state legislators.
Thank you. Next question is, are you aware of how many young adults are riding scooters are seriously injured and disabled for life? Part of the problem is lack of helmets. Any comment?
Yeah, I agree. It's very, so I'll just back up. I've had this thought for a long time. It's not just about scooters. It's also about the bikes. It's both. The bikes that you can rent, that are around town, as well as the scooters. And I think we need to require folks to wear helmets. Like, it's not safe, and we can't be just creating these dangers. I think it's been a big battle in general, kind of who regulates how these scooters and bikes are regulated. You have a lot, there was a whole problem for a while where people would just like leave their scooter in the middle of the sidewalk or the street, right? And so I think we're starting to get that a little bit better under control, and put some actual like regulations on these scooter companies. By the way, this is not in the county's jurisdiction, so I can't do anything about the problem, but I can strongly agree with you that this is a big issue. And I do want to give credit where credit's due. I think our city San Diego is moving in the right direction, and certainly at least we don't have scooters sort of piled up in the middle of the sidewalk anymore. And I think we're moving in the right direction, but we've got a ways to go.
Thank you. Another question is, given the year-round favorable climate, outdoor lifestyle, and natural geography in San Diego County, and the increased mobility and wealth of U.S. professionals in the last generation, I would guess that a sizable percentage of housing in our region is investor-owned, both individual and corporations, compared to other cities. Has San Diego ever considered a luxury tax on homes after their first homes? This would complement your programs for first-time home buyers. Will these issues also be considered by your housing committee?
These are definitely going to be considered by the housing committee. I think it's a really promising idea. I'm very interested in like all these kinds of ideas. I think it wouldn't be it might be what's been proposed is something like a vacancy tax. So it's not only that it would have to be a second home, it would be that the home is vacant. Because obviously if someone's renting the house, that's good and someone's living there. But the problem is having like vacant homes that are depleting our housing stock. And so that's definitely something folks are looking at. I think is really interesting and promising. There's a lot of ideas like that. And I think I just want to acknowledge and appreciate that question, because I think that the thing that often goes unsaid, and I feel like I see a lot of elected officials talking about housing. We need to know more about housing. Well, at the end of the day, we're going to need revenue. We're going to need money to build housing. It's not like going to fall from the sky, which means there's going to have to be some kind of revenue measures. And then everyone gets real upset because they don't want to talk about revenue measures. So I actually really appreciate the like reality check that this question brings, which is like, we're going to have to find some revenue somewhere. And how do we align the incentives correctly so that we're bringing the revenue from the right places and not just, making like life more expensive for folks who live here.
Great, thank you. Another question is, you mentioned supporting senior programs. Are there any specific efforts that are being worked on currently?
Well, one thing I think is really exciting, we just launched a pilot program for seniors who are at risk of becoming homeless, where we're giving folks a subsidy of about $300 a month to be able to stay in their homes, because a lot of the research, and again, this goes back to my kind of approach that's really looking at how do we be data-driven and evidence-based, but a lot of the research suggests that if seniors just had a couple $100s more a month, they'd be able to stay in their houses. What's happening is that cost of living is increasing, rents are increasing, but seniors are on fixed incomes, which are not keeping up with the rising cost of living. And if we could just give them this little gap subsidy to keep them in their homes, they wouldn't become homeless. And it's not just, again, it's not just the right thing to do, because people should not be on the street. Seniors should not be on the street, but it's also the significantly more economically cost effective. If someone ends up in a shelter, it costs over $2,500 a month versus $300 a month to keep someone in their home. So it just makes so much more sense. Like, keep people in their house. It's the right thing. It's the moral thing. It's the humane thing. It's the compassionate thing. And it's the financially wise thing to do. So I'm very excited about that program. And I think it's pretty important to kind of share a statistic that blew me away when I heard it. But almost 25% of the people on our streets are over 55. So it's a lot of seniors out there, and it's really not right. And I think this is a program that is definitely taking us in the right direction.
Great, thank you. Supervisor Lawson-Remer, can you address ghost guns and the efforts being made currently?
Is this another plant?
No.
No, I really appreciate it, because this is an issue I'm very passionate about. I brought a board action along with Nathan, my colleague Chair Fletcher, to get much more serious about prosecuting ghost gun manufacture and distribution here in San Diego County. We are very focused on cracking down. I mean, I think something, if this is not an issue familiar to people, it should be. There is now the capacity to basically print guns using 3D printers, and as well as order like a certain of spare parts. And if you print the gun or you just order the parts, there's no rule that require, or hadn't been, let's just say, now there is, but there's no federal rule requiring that these guns be registered with registration numbers. And so now what we've done in San Diego County and said, absolutely not. If you're printing a gun, if you're selling the parts of guns, you need to have a registration number on those gun parts so that we actually can trace the guns. And a big piece of that is holding the manufacturers accountable as well. You can't just make these gun pieces available and then be complicit without any kind of accountability. So what we really had to do was change the law so that our DA could prosecute, because before it wasn't something that you could be prosecuted for. It was just allowed. You were just allowed to sort of, sorry, print these guns. So now we've given DA Summer Steffens the power to go after these ghost gun manufacturers and really try to nip this distribution in the bud, which is a really important. There was a homicide of a police officer just last year with a ghost gun. And as a mother of a 3-year-old, you know, the gun safety issues are really important to me.
Great, thank you, Supervisor Lawson-Remer. I don't have another question, but if you want to share another one of your platform a little bit more, well, maybe there's another question that comes in. We do have a little bit of more time. Actually, one just came in, so we'll do closing notes in just a bit. So one more question is, San Diego County oversees public health and vector-borne disease surveillance. This public health role is now better understood due to COVID. Although we are not a highly endemic region, Lyme disease and tick-borne disease is present and rising in 48 of 52 California counties, including San Diego. Infected ticks are more prevalent in the Bay Area, and many San Diego travel to or relocate from highly endemic areas on the East Coast and Northern California. Is there a way for informed community members to have a direct discussion with San Diego Public Health and brainstorm on ideas to address this growing public health issue? By the way, there is a San Diego Walk for Lyme event on Mission Bay, April 9th, and we have worked closely with Congressman Peters on federal funding for the past 6 years. Long-winded, but did you get that question, Supervisor Remer?
Got it, and it was a great plug for the walk. So
Yep.
very, very efficient question asking. Thank you very much. Yeah, I love that idea. I think that shouldn't be that hard to organize. I'm just I think we could definitely put together a little meeting. On this call is Cody from my team, Cody Pedersen. So I think the best thing to do would be perhaps Cody, I think you could, if you can connect with Cody Pedersen, and we can organize a meeting with the public health folks and see where that goes. But I think that's a great idea. This is obviously important for the county to be, getting ahead of these kinds of issues.
Sorry about that. And Cody you're able to use the chat, so you can have it there for everyone to see and provide your information if you'd like to share that. Another question is, how can a nonprofit that is serving medically fragile seniors who are unsheltered apply for pre-procurement funding from the Board of Supervisors?
Say that again.
How can a nonprofit that is serving medically fragile seniors who are unsheltered apply for pre-procurement funding from the Board of Supervisors?
That is very challenging. So the way that the Board of Supervisors funding works is basically we pass kind of policy and areas and budgets, and then it goes to procurement to essentially they'll put out a request for proposals for entities that can fulfill the policy priorities of the board. And certainly what you outlined is like well in line with our priorities, but we are not, as board members, have nothing to do, we can't have anything to do with procurement due to county charter policies, which I've done a deep dive on county charter policies. This one was set in like the 30s. It's quite interesting. But point is we can't have anything to do with procurement. So basically have to look for these requests for proposals and then make sure that the program kind of meets the needs of what the policy priorities are as outlined in the request for proposals, and then put in a proposal. That's how it works. If you have like a small project that's not large scale, it's just, it's more community focused, community centered, then you can come to my office, and we have, a small fund pool of community enhancement and neighborhood reinvestment grants that we have discretion over. And you could apply through there, but it's a much smaller pool. It's, the grant size are more like 15 grand, $20,000, something in that category, as opposed to what the county procurement process funds, which are, you know, big programs like in the millions of dollars.
Thank you. Next question, San Diego Police Department and the Sheriff's Department arrest, but the follow through on prosecution is falling far short. Too many are let go without proper jail time. Any comment?
There's a lot of challenges in our jails. I mean, I think the, you know, I think it's good we're getting a new sheriff. I think there's going to be some hopefully, you know, reorientation. But honestly, this is not something that me as a supervisor, I don't have any jurisdiction over. The DA makes decisions around prosecutions. The sheriff makes decisions around arrests in the jails. So the county board doesn't really have any ability to influence that. You know, I think the role that we can play is providing services, but not really on the arrest and prosecution side.
Thank you. Another question is, what funding is available through the county for street projects and how can local groups obtain it?
Similar answer to the question I gave on the other question around funding, but this one's even more challenging because of jurisdictional conflicts with the cities. So the way it works is the streets and roads are city responsibilities unless you're in an unincorporated area. So La Jolla has to go to the city of San Diego to deal with your streets and roads. The only parts of my district that I can help out with street and road funding are the unincorporated areas. So like Elfin Forest, for example, is unincorporated. I don't have very much unincorporated areas. But the short answer is, unless you're from Elfin Forest or I guess Rancho Santa Fe and on this call, probably there's not much the county can do. Have to talk to the city because La Jolla roads are the city of San Diego's jurisdiction.
Thank you. Supervisor Lawson-Remer, that was the last question that I have. Would you like to share any closing notes for everyone watching?
Well, first of all, I'm just really happy to represent La Jolla and want everyone to know that my office is always here to serve and always here to be helpful. So if there's any questions you have, any way we can help, and even if we can't help you, at least we can help get you in touch with someone else who hopefully will be more, you know, has the right jurisdiction. Because I know sometimes it's confusing if it's city or county or Caltrans or Sandag. I know it's all not very obvious. So we're happy to both help as much as we can at the county and then be a navigator and ambassador to get you where you need to be if we can't do what you need. I'm just so excited to have La Jolla in the district. If there's places that you want to invite us, we'd love to show up. If there's community enhancement grants or neighborhood reinvestment grants anyone wants to apply for, please reach out. Cipriano Vargas on my team is responsible for those grants, and he'd be more than happy to walk you through the process or do a one-on-one training or even have a training for La Jolla groups who might want to attend to get to kind of better understand how that process is navigated. And I'm just always open, always here, and please keep me posted on what your big priorities are so we can work on them together.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Supervisor Terra Lawson-Remer. It's a pleasure to have you as our county supervisor for our district. Thank you again for being here, and anyone else, everyone else who is watching, thanks for attending, and we hope to see you all back soon. And just before we end, Cody did add his information there, and here, we'll go ahead and add that to make it available to everyone. If Deb, if you can copy and paste and make it available to Sharon, that would be great. Thank you all again for attending. We hope to see you all back soon at the La Jolla Community Center. You can find out more about our programs at www.ljcommunitycenter.org. Hope to see you back soon. Take care. Have a good evening.
Thank you.